Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our second episode of Intleacht, which is AI. And today we have a brilliant presentations for yourselves. Now, I'm Mary Flynn. I'm a CitA Director and I'm an Assistant Chief Quantity Surveyor with Dublin City Council. And today's event, and this is 2 of 6, so there's 4 more exciting events coming along, is AI for generative design, planning and early stage design making. And first, before we start, I'd like to thank all our sponsors, without whom we wouldn't be able to do the great work we are doing. So I'd like to thank BAM, Cosmos, NTI, AKM, John Paul, and Evercam. And I'd say, without whom we wouldn't be able to do as much as we can. So thank you. I would also like to thank our collaborators. This is a brilliant collaboration between all the professional bodies, or most of the professional bodies here in Ireland. And we're all learning from each other because we all have the same problems, the same issues, the same challenges, and the same, about AI. So it's here. Now I'd like to introduce our 2 latest collaborators. One is CEWC, and for quantity surveyors there, you'll know it's the European Council of Construction Cost Economists, which is quantity surveyors generally. So we're going live to all over Europe and actually Canada and beyond, believe it or not. But I would also like to welcome Women in BIM. And if there's anybody out there who would like to join us, please come and join us. It's by sharing and collaborating we're going to learn, and we're going, it's like a rising tide floats all boats. We're in that position and we will learn from each other. So please, if you want to join us, come join us. Today is our second webinar, and this is AI for generative design, and it's planning and early stage decision making. We're lucky now we have 2 very, very good experts, brilliant speakers. So I'm going to introduce them one at a time. And basically what I would like, if you would, please, if you have any questions and answers, if you could put them into the chat box. So after we've done with the webinars, we will then have a chat. There'll be a Q&A session at the very, very end where we'll be able to discuss things. So first up is Breffney, and Breffney is a registered architect, MRII, and head of AI and design innovation at Henry J. Lyons. He also chairs the RAI AI Task Force in guiding responsible technology adoption across the profession. He has over 15 years' experience delivering complex urban projects across Ireland and master plans and landmark redevelopments. Very experienced. And this frontline experience has shaped his perspective. Architects are already systems thinkers, and they are critical thinkers as well, and creative problem solvers. And AI demands more and more use of these skills. So Breffney has completed his complemented his architectural practice with focus study in AI strategy and implementation with UCD, AI and regulatory compliance with the Law Society of Ireland. So we're in really good company here, and also governance and emergence regulations with MIT, another very good university, and ethics again with the Law Society of Ireland and LSE, and programming again with UCD. This position puts him, helps him translate emerging technologies into practical frameworks that architects can trust. Now he believes the architect's role is evolving, and the profession should lead the conversation about AI in the built environment, and I couldn't agree with him more, and that it is grounded in ethics, governance, and creative confidence. So I'm going to hand you over to Breffney, and Breffney is going to talk us through his presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to have been asked to speak at this event today. In fact, it was an event organised by CitA itself that I decided I wanted to shift the trajectory of my career path and focus entirely on AI and the impact it'll have on design. I have a good bit of content to get through today, so I'll be talking about our AI adoption journey at Henry J. Lyons Architects, why this has been a people-centric journey, the emergence of new critical skill sets, and I'll walk you through a handful of practical, real-world applications of using AI right now. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So let's dive in. So I suppose, as most of you maybe already know, Henry J. Lyons, I won't dwell too much on our background, but my role there is leading AI strategy, development, research. Crucially, I'm coming at this as an architect with over 15 years in practice, and 12 of which I've been in Henry J. Lyons. rather than coming from a technological background or an IT background. I sort of felt that this is something that should be led by the architect when we're talking about an architectural practice. So I know exactly how we design, sort of what our clients expect and the daily realities of running a practice. And if there is one major takeaway I've had over the last year and a half in this role, it's that the shift is rarely about the technology. It's almost entirely about the people and the culture. And because of that, I suppose my real area of study and interest is, and daily focus is bridging the gap between the technical and the practical. Researching how we can drive responsible adoption, establish clear governance and transparency, and ultimately build human trust in these tools as we become more dependent on them. So I suppose Alvin Toffler, in his book from 1970s, The Future Shock, has said that the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. So this quote in the last couple of days, and I thought that this was quite appropriate maybe for what we're starting to see in this work. I think we have to sort of challenge what we know already and maybe somewhat speculate as to what can come next. When we started looking at this within the practice, it became clear that AI is fundamentally shifting how we make decisions, how we communicate, and what we actually value in our designs. But there's no off-the-shelf solution here. Every practice is different, and I think your strategy, or our strategy anyway, you don't have to grow organically from a place of understanding how the specific studios or practices work, how the people operate, the relationships, and the capabilities, understanding the limitations of trying to push something that maybe not a right fit. So we made a crucial decision early on that we didn't want to test AI in isolation. We didn't lock it away in a silo. It wasn't confined to one particular corner or specialists. We wanted to empower people across the practice. So we wanted to build an environment where people could experiment safely. They could find real value. They could learn at the pace that suited them. So we put a framework of policies and guardrails in place. I think this is something that I was told a number of years ago. If you're going to start using AI and adopting AI, write a policy. Doesn't matter how long it is, just write a policy. Set a framework up to actually use this responsibly, but also not something that necessarily stops you from using it, but something that can guide experimentation, and you can begin to maybe use it strategically. So I suppose we deliberately designed it in a way that was more permissive than restrictive. We wanted to empower our teams and not, I suppose, prohibit them from using certain platforms. But to do that, you have to do it responsibly. You have to do it in a way that is safeguards, the property of the practice as well. So I suppose we provided the tools. We provided the tools that we felt were right for the tasks. We provided ongoing training over the last number of years. We actively encouraged the use of AI across a number of stages, across teams, and ultimately, I think we found that our adoption of AI became embedded at the center of our strategy and how we approach our work, how we do business. So really, the demand followed the interest, and interest then began to show potential in certain workflows and certain areas, and potential has now become results where we're seeing real value. So this is the idea of Jevons paradox, and his theory is based on steam engines becoming more fuel efficient, which led to them becoming used more widespread, and in turn led to the total cost of consumption increasing as well. So if we apply this concept to AI, compute gets cheaper, it's cheaper energy per unit, tools become more accessible, more capable. There's an explosive demand that comes out of all this. More people begin to use AI, but also then more value gets created. and when we have more value created as well, and we rely more on these tools, more responsibility follows. And I think what we need to consider here is that the opportunity is not to do the same work for less. It's worth pursuing new areas, maybe new areas of interest, new potential business models, and new ways of working. So it is also worth considering that the roles that we have maybe in 10 years' time may not exist yet. And I think, that is, as I say, that's something worth being excited about. I think we can, rather than seeing a drop off in job creation over the years, I think as a creative profession, I think we can begin to find new ways to apply our skill sets, emerging skill sets. And I think that itself can be quite an exciting idea to consider. As designers, we are critical thinkers. It's our most valuable asset. But with AI generating content instantly, the real skill now is knowing, I suppose, when to trust that output. Judgment, taste, and critical thinking, they all become more valuable as AI expands. And what we're really seeing here is a major shift away from the highly specialized architect, maybe back towards the generalist. For years, the industry has pushed us into areas of narrow the specialties, but AI is the ultimate specialist. It can answer the specific question for us. And I think our job is more as a generalist now to sort of find better questions to apply these new skills. Ultimately, our role is shifting from being the manual author of every line drawn, 3D family modeled, document created, to becoming more of a steward, the master builder who orchestrates the process and owns the quality, the direction, the absolute integrity of the final design. A recent paper by Anthropic highlights that this was AI isn't really replacing jobs overnight. It is targeting individual tasks like analyzing sites, suggesting design layouts, looking at compliance or coordination. So if we look at the area of architecture and engineering on this graph, right now we see that we are nowhere near using these models for their potential. But as they advance, that's the red is the observed coverage and blue is the theoretical coverage. So as they advance, they'll absorb more and more of these tasks until, I suppose, the entire profession is exposed, or at least according to the creators of these models. Interesting as to why it's maybe not more widespread already. But because of this trajectory, I think deciding to sit back and do nothing is no longer a neutral choice. But I think the judgment of what is good belongs to humans and speed belongs to AI. So this is one of the quotes that I found from Anthropic. Had done another piece of research recently, querying 81,000 users across the globe as to what they want out of AI, how are they using it, and I think this one stood out to me. I think it's quite appropriate, and hopefully we all agree with it. When we come to talk about AI ethics and regulation, I think we can see that as we scale technology, we must look at embedding robust frameworks around ethics and transparency. I think these become non-negotiable. The EU Act makes it a legal obligation, not just professional. We also have to recognise that the public AI literacy is lagging way behind what these tools can actually do now. That's maybe becoming more evident in the last number of months. So that gap is exactly where misinformation, mistrust thrive. And so yes, AI has massively expanded our capabilities, but our professional accountability hasn't changed. No matter what these tools or what tools we use to generate the work, ultimately the responsibility, it stays with the human guiding the systems. To look at maybe AI and how it's being used in planning, we're currently seeing two different approaches to AI colliding with the planning system. Both of these are in the UK. On one side, you have a top-down approach, looking at developing institutional tools with projects like Extract. So that's a joint project between Google and the UK government that is all about digitizing decades of planning documents to try speed up the process. And we can maybe see what applications that could have for the rest of the planning process. On the other side, we have a bottom-up tools or sort of the emerging startups that are creating tools such as Objector, which will allow the public to generate highly convincing policy-backed planning objections in sort of a matter of minutes. And I mean, these don't even have to be necessarily factually correct to actually overwhelm the system. The planning system was never intended to sort of or designed to work in this way, and I think there's a case study there. From 2024, I'm sure there's many more since then, but the High Court had criticised an AI-written submission. It had probably all the telltale signs of a GPT-written submission. And again, that took up time of the High Court and all the people that had to engage with this and the money that goes alongside that. So it's not that these have to be even correct to overwhelm the system. So we need to ask questions ourselves as to how in the public sector we're going to deal with all these challenges too. Looking now at our own experience, what we've learned from our adoption journey as well within Energy Lines. I wanted to pull a couple of figures here. I think it's difficult always to measure return on investment unless you're talking about, I suppose you're talking about people's time, people's money. But when we see the use, when we see the shift in the use, the buy-in and the trust, I think across a practice on a large scale, I think that's when we can start to see that this is technology that shows a promise and how it's applied in every aspect of the work. So when we use it from project reporting, concept ideation, material selection, visual submittal reviews, administrative support. And I'll go into a couple of use cases later on, but primarily our dominant use of AI is with large language models. I think we've given ourselves in the profession or inherited a huge amount of burden through bureaucracy and regulation, reporting, a lot of work that actually, that has, it takes away maybe from the design aspect of what we do, the collaboration and the human element. A lot of it becomes sort of often mundane, often very necessary, but also something that could be assisted. So we see a lot of benefit in large language models to allow the creativity to sort of, I think, have a bit more time and flexibility. We've 265 people, I think, the practice now. Looking at our logs, well, most of those people, I think we've 250 have access to our own enterprise platform. 188 are active users. That's in the last 12 months, we've produced 77,000 messages, or 1.3 billion words, which is equivalent to 5 million A4 pages of sort of AI-assisted work, and that's across a range of different applications. That might just be for consuming information rather than just generating new information, cross-checking, compliance, a number of different things. So, well, I don't have a figure. Unfortunately, a lot of the image generation platforms, they don't really give you the best statistics on usage. So it's something that I think we'd love to dive into a little bit more. But every studio now across the practice, there's 9 studios, they're effectively creating, they're generating images for all parts of the process, and to help with the design process, not as a static render perhaps at the end of the process, but to inform design decisions from a very early stage. So the question is no longer whether or not we're using AI, it really is as a practice as to whether or not we're using it deliberately, collectively and strategically. And that does, pose a challenge, I think, to us in practice to make sure that we are all using it for the right purposes as well. And, everyone sort of sees maybe what this could bring to the profession in value, but also the threats and the challenges that come with technology like this. from a number of surveys that were run, and just have some interesting figures here, where 45% of users are effectively using it daily, and that's across a range of different systems. And 84% using it weekly for their work. In terms of the sentiment around the use, I think 95% really had a positive overall impact through the adoption of AI. 83% said that it sped up the process, which is probably to be expected. 62% said that they got better outcomes as a result of using AI at some point during the process. 46% said that it added value to the overall process. 45% said that it improves communication, which I think we're really beginning to see as well. It promotes collaboration across teams, whether that's internally, whether that's across design teams. It actually gets us to engage more rather than sort of sitting at a desk and actually alone. And that might be just through, using transcriptions on calls to get more people to engage in a conversation, to turn something that was a natural conversation into something that could be, reported on, or you're generating insights from. 28% said that it improved the design process overall. And I actually think this is quite an interesting statistic. I think it's a statistic that will grow over time. Not all of these people responding to the survey would have had access to maybe tools that would have helped in the design process. They may have purely just been on the with large language models. So I think it's a good statistic, but also curious as to what people think about maybe the remaining 72%. So what does this look like in practice? I'm going to look through some use cases now, just for the next few minutes. So I'm going to speed up a little bit on this because I know we're under time pressure. Many of you may have access to a large language platform themselves. I think if you don't, and people always ask where to start with an enterprise platform. This is a bespoke platform available for architects, not readily available, however. But what we've done here, and you can do it with you can do it with GPT, you can do it with Claude, you can do it with Gemini. We effectively created a concierge. So we created Henry and gave Henry contextual awareness of how the practice operates. It knows how to handle certain queries. It's also based on ChatGPT 5.3 Mini, which means it's very cheap to run, very quick to run. And what it's doing here is actually it is handing off a query to another agent that has knowledge about our BIM documentation, how to set up models and the like. So you can sort of see this actually goes on. There's a number of different models. If you ask different queries, it'll pass you on to another agent. And I think that capability is improving over time. Here's a great example of how you could maybe use particular models, such as this one in the background is built on Perplexity. Perplexity is a web-based model. This agent has been given a set of instructions as to how to go about researching a product. So it does this in a structured or repetitive way every time you approach it with the question with the product. You compare two products side by side as well. And you can see it's sort of giving a well-considered answer. It's answering the questions that we've asked to. And at the end, it starts asking or it's providing some documentation and areas that are perhaps missed as well, DOPs, the likes of that. So you can see that it's doing a fairly good check on researching products, and then this can be applied at a number of different stages: research a project for a spec, or maybe checking an alternative product that has been suggested. We use generative tools such as Finch, where we're trying these. We feel that they're useful. They show promise. They're perhaps not fully there yet. I think it's fair to say that we will rely on generative tools down the line. This is a tool that is built around a library of typologies that we have built with Finch, and that suggests the best layout. And it's very quick to sort of generate insights and areas from these models. Often we find that it requires a level of manual input. There's design decisions that we want to own. There's a way that we would always approach a layout, And we do a lot of that then manually, and then sort of use this almost as a validation tool rather than something that is generating something and then us having to review the work of the AI. I think this one's really interesting. I tried to hopefully do it justice with this video. I know I suppose it's a GIS-based tool. It's great for mapping out or analyzing sites, for producing information for maybe pre-planning, planning documentation. You can see I've sped it up here, but you're able to engage with it using a chat interface, and it effectively is carrying out a number of tasks. You get this as PDF, JPEG, I think a DXF as well. You can turn it into 3D mode as I have it here. So it's a really useful tool, and it's sort of often overlooked, but sometimes the simple tools can actually deliver quite a lot of value as well. So give that a look if you're interested. My colleague and on the research team, Conor Nolan, had presented on this at CitA, I think a number of months ago, but this is the idea that we are now able to create bespoke applications to solve problems that perhaps we see. Conor built a model that it was a visual language model using RoboFlow that would analyze a set of drawings. We trained it on our own drawings so that it would improve the accuracy. So that's what's happening on the left. On the right, we're putting a drawing into Gemini. It was 2.5 Pro at the time, trying to see if you trained on a data set of our own drawings, could you extract far more information? And yes, it was almost 3 times the amount of information you could extract if you trained it on your own data set rather than using an available model. And this can be used for a number of different applications, but we'll start to see more of this, I think, in the industry over the next while. I promise I'm coming to the end now of these as well, but this is maybe an image generation tool or platform. This is Weavy. It's where you're using this canvas-based platform with an array of different models to do different tasks. And what I've done here is I've taken a 2D image, which is a photograph. I've worked up a number of different steps here that is ultimately creating a 3D mesh from a 2D image. And then what it's doing on the right-hand side is that's something that's come from our 3D printer within our office here now. So 2D image straight to 3D printer with no cleanup involved. So I think this shows real potential and something that we're exploring a little bit more of within practice. If we look at something similar again, you can see this is used for actually selecting materials for a particular project. So almost trying to source the material. We had a vision. We were taking a photograph, turning a photograph into a swatch with AI, effectively changing the compound of the terrazzo here, creating a mood board, rendering an image, zooming in on a particular junction of detail, and then applying that to this. So the image on the right-hand side is actually taking that material, that process, and applying it to the building that we were designing, and helping us decide if that material is the material for us, going back to the supplier and seeing, can we get this? This is exactly what we want. And it's sort of an interesting process. The last use case here is just Marble by World Labs. So it's an image to 3D world model. This was a single 2D image turned into a 3D world. You can see that it starts to sort of degrade the further you go into the image, particularly over in this corner. But this is what's coming. These are great to put on the VR headset and actually walk around something that was ultimately created from a set of some words. So I think that there'll be a surge of VR, I think, over the next 12 months as well. You can imagine you've created the space, you have the headset on, now you want to change the materials, and so you can do it in a way that's instantaneous. So finally, just as my key takeaways, I think what I want to get across here, that this really is about people before technology. The technology is moving far faster than I think we can keep up with. We need to look at the right culture fit and building trust, to roll these tools out across businesses and practice. Managing the pace is important. Harnessing the curiosity, looking at the people across practice that are interested, using that momentum to build on. So be aware of the limitations of the models, the legal obligations, the professional obligations, keeping the human at the center of every decision. And I suppose asking ourselves, do we really want to automate away our ownership? But it's fair to say the design process is being redefined at the moment. whether we're part of it or not. I think I would say engage now, engage early, and let's try shape it all together as a profession. So thank you very much for listening in today. I'll finish on that one.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Breffney. If you have any questions for Breffney, please put them in the chat box. So we'll move on now to our next speaker, Jonathan. A lot of you will all know Jonathan as well, Jonathan Reinhardt. And Jonathan is a chartered architectural technologist and technical consultant, and his experience spans BIM implementation across architecture, engineering, and construction firms. He brings a solid background in BIM management, building design, and site supervision. Jonathan holds a master's degree in BIM management and a BS degree in architectural technology, and has been sharing his knowledge and expertise by lecturing at TU Dublin in architectural technology, architecture, and BIM smart masterclasses. So I'll hand it over to you, Jonathan, now, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marion, and thank you, Breffney, and for everybody for joining us today. So, I suppose, I think Breffney has painted, quite a good foundation there for me to take on, and really appreciate the insight and the importance of the points that Breffney has highlighted there. So thank you very much. So what I'm going to cover, a lot of it is going to focus on a particular piece of software and where that fits into part of potentially where AI and generative design might fit into what Breffney was covering there as well. So what I'm going to cover is it's a tool called Autodesk Forma. It's a piece of software that we're quite experienced here with at NTI Digital Solutions. We've implemented it in a number of architectural and design practices in Ireland and in the UK as well. And that's primarily our day-to-day services is providing those type of implementation expertise and project management around that. Just a little bit about NTI. We've about 1,000 employees. We're in 13 countries. We've about 33,000 customers across the AEC space, architecture, engineering, construction, as well as some manufacturing as well. So we're a global company, just to give you that little bit of context. These are the different areas that we focus our consultancy areas and topics and expertise on: BIM consulting, API integrations, CD implementation, data analytics, as well as different types of Autodesk training and software as well. That's just a very brief bit about us. So to continue on then to speak about, I suppose, Breffney certainly agreed with or I agree with, it's about people in when you're bringing in any type of change into a business or an organization. It is about people, and that's the most important thing. And certainly what I found in my experience, you have to bring people along with you to make any change happen. And whether that's bringing in a piece of technology, a piece of software, it has to be aligned to potentially defined outcomes, whether they're business outcomes or organizational outcomes. What is the reason that we're making this change? What's that bigger picture reason that we're bringing in a piece of AI or a piece of software or a new CRM system or a new ERP system, for example? What are the business changes that we need to happen? Is it about growth? Is it about changing with the industry? Is it about changing the type of business we're doing as well? So any type of change being brought into a business or organization is about having those defined outcomes. And this is generally how we approach our different types of implementations. And it's about aligning on different types of outcomes, then potentially going to technology selection. So defining your outcomes and going, okay, well, what piece of software do we want to fill this piece of change or type of outcome that we're trying to achieve? And then the change management piece, which is, the biggest piece where people need to be brought along, they need to be supported, they need to have buy-in, and they need to feel like they're part of that change that's happening and have an input and a contribution as well. And then it's about measuring the impact as well. So is there an efficiency? Is there a cost saving? What are the type of stats that we can measure out of this? And I think Breffney highlighted, quite a high volume of amount of information that's been generated in some of the stats he referred to as well in his information there. I'm going to go through another couple of slides just about the piece of software, and then I'm going to go into the software live and do a bit of a demonstration on screen. So effectively what Autodesk Forma is, it looks at things like early stage site analysis, particularly from an architectural perspective. It will do things like area analysis, sun error analysis, daylight potential analysis, wind, microclimate, embodied carbon analysis, noise, solar, and then additional other type of analysis that can also be brought into that environment as well. It's a cloud-hosted software, so it's accessed through a web browser. It does integrate with other pieces of software, such as Rhino, such as Revit, for example. You can bring in different massing studies into those type of tools. So I suppose how does AI form part of the Autodesk Forma platform? So effectively, Forma's rapid analysis, its wind, its noise, all of that uses machine learning to provide almost instantaneous and various different types of predictions as well. When quick decisions need to be made, ML models bring these insights then closer to your design workflows or your design team's workflow as well, giving you that real-time guidance effectively. And that's where Forma fits into that realm. So just to give you a little bit on that. To calculate time savings, I pulled these numbers from ChatGPT. There are no published stats on what Autodesk Forma time can save. So I said, okay, let's do a little bit of an ironic research here and try ChatGPT. So, from what it pulled from online, various different locations, different types of talks, different types of forum posts, etc., you're looking at between 30 and 60% of time saving. And that's quite a broad range. And I completely agree with that broad range, because it depends on the scale at which you're using this tool. Is it across, a small practice, a medium practice, or is it, large size practice as well? All of that's going to vary. Either way, when you're using a tool such as this for early stage site analysis, the automations and the generative functions inside of it, it will reduce tasks from potentially days down to hours, or potentially hours down to minutes. And that's why that broad range saving is looking at something like 30 to 60%. What we could test, for example, 10 options instead of 2 options, you might hear some users, I would say, or site analysis can be done in almost an instance as well. So taking that with a little pinch of salt, just to give you an indication of the automation of where, how time saved can potentially have an impact to your teams and to your organization. So without further ado, what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into the software in a moment. Briefly, just going to show you a very quick video. There's no audio on this. I will talk over this audio. So what I'm going to show you is how you set up a project in Autodesk Forma, and then I'm going to get into a pre-made model that I have. So it allows you to select a real-world location. So whether that's in Dublin, London, anywhere across the world, you select your real-world location. It brings in a terrain model. You can also bring in other types of information, such as Esri data, other types of external plugins interact with it as well, and bring in lots of different types of information. It can bring in surrounding building context and generate that very quick. Again, this is taking something that would have taken potentially hours a number of years ago down to a couple of minutes. Is generating that complete site context in a very, very swift moment. So that's what we saw in the video. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump into my demonstration, one I have pre-made earlier. So I'll just confirm you can see my screen. I'll just double check that you can. Yeah, perfect. Okay. So you can see my various different type of models. So I'm logged in here into Autodesk Forma. You can see that in the top left corner. This tool is now known as Forma Site Design. The reason for that is, some of you may be familiar, Autodesk did a bit of a rebranding of their ACC tools the other day. That's also called Autodesk Forma. That's called Autodesk Forma Data Management, and there's Autodesk Forma Build as well. So what we're in here is Autodesk Forma Site Design, and that's primarily focused on that early stage design stages, or feasibility testing of different types of site layouts, or potential residential sites, mixed use commercial sites, and various different types of sites of generating layouts in a very quick manner. So effectively, it is a cloud-based tool. You can see I'm logged into the web browser in the top left. On the left-hand side, what I have called here is my proposal. So my proposals are my different design options, effectively. So what this allows me is to generate different types of proposals. So again, like that quote I had in my slides there, we were able to test 10 options instead of 2 options. So what I have here is 4 different proposals of different types of layouts. So if I flick through them, if I go to number 1, for example, here's a particular site layout. I took a particular site in East Point Business Park there in Dublin 3, just to see, okay, if we were to convert, a bit of the industrial use at the back of the site towards the port into residential or mixed use commercial, what potentially could be fit on the site, and how quickly could I generate a site design based on that. So this morning you can see I spent a bit of time generating a quick number of options. So we have 4 options in here, generated in about the space of an hour. A bit of detail added to them as well, but can be generated quite quickly. So again, that's taking tasks that might take hours down to minutes, for example, or what might take days down to hours as well. So that's where that number kind of fits into that. This particular option that I have open here, you can see there's different kind of colors. I've set different types of uses. I've community use, commercial use, residential use. So we have a mixed use development effectively happen here. But what if we want to look at, for example, a housing development? I was able to generate another option in option number 2. There we go. What if we want to look at a housing development on the same side as well? We're able to quickly generate various different types of, house types on that site, different types of size, different types of buffer spacing from each, block across, different types of public open space, for example. How quickly can we generate these as well? So I was able to then perform these different types of options effectively, if we just look at 1, 2, and 3 for the moment. So let number 3 load. So I was able to look at these options in a very, very quick manner and then perform different types of analysis on it. So it's not just about effectively the volume, extrusion of 3D model elements, or it's not about the placing of objects necessarily. It's also about what else can I do with those BIM or those information in terms of analysis. Can I bring it into other pieces of software such as Revit, etc.? So if we just come back to our various different proposals, I'm able to cycle through those proposals, and what I'm able to do is I'm able to compare those different proposals, look at different statistics, what are the metrics between them, for example. So if I want to compare, let's say, a particular option, I'm able to open up different options of those. Let's say compare version 1 to version 2. Or proposal 1 to proposal 2, I should say. It will bring up those two options side by side. So I've got my more, housing focused layout on the right hand side with my large kind of public open space, and then on the left hand side I've got proposal number 1, which is more of a mixed use development. So what it's showing me here then is the area metrics comparison for each of those sites. I can see how many units I can fit on each site, for example. I can see what the square meter of residential on either site is, or commercial on either site. If we go whole hog residential on this, and a mixed use on the left hand side, how do they compare? So this is just purely by generating the geometry, assigning different types of uses. Am I assigning something as residential, as commercial, as community? That's what it compares then within the area metrics. So as long as I've assigned particular buildings or particular blocks, that area metric then will record in that dialog box that you're seeing on the right hand side. Then your gross floor area, your gross internal area, and your net internal area as well. It will report on all of those. If I then want to perform some analysis on some of those options, for example, effectively what I do is I come back into my preferred option, let's say. So I'm just going to X out of that for a moment. I'm going to come back into my site designer, and I want to open up a particular option. And let's say on the right hand side here, I've got different options. So what we looked at there was I compared area metrics side by side. So very basic stuff, looking at square meter compared for each option. But if I wanted to look at something like sun hours analysis for each one, I can run that analysis inside here on each option. So I'll run it on proposal 1, I'll run it on proposal 2, for example, and then what I can do is then compare the sun analysis of either option. I can also do the same for daylight potential, the same for wind analysis on both of those options, or on all 4 options that I have here on the left hand side. So because I prepared some earlier, I'm going to show you what some of those further analysis looks like when I do them side by side. So again, I'm just going to choose option 1 and 4. 1 and 3 we'll go with, and I'll do compare. So initially what it showed was the area metrics, but all I'm going to do is just swap out those particular options. So on proposal 1, I'm going to go, okay, well, what else do I have in proposal 3, or even in proposal 2 that I can compare? So sorry, I'll look at proposal 2, daylight potential, make sure that I have done both in either option. So there's daylight potential in proposal 2. I go, okay, well, I want to see also in proposal 1, I want to see my daylight potential as well. So that's me cycling through the 2 different proposals and then going through the various different analyses that have been performed on it. So if I cycle through these, for example, it will rotate the same angle as I'm in. You can see the camera follows in both views. If I zoom in, if I want to go into a particular facade element and see maybe more detailed options, for example, where it's particularly lack of daylight potential, I can go, what's the score of that, for example, and it will give me the various different scoring of those different elements within that as well, purely just based on that geometry being generated and then the analysis being initiated in that previous screen as well. I can cycle through different settings. Is it just facades? Is it just roofs? Do I have other geometry in there, for example, that I've included? I can also import other geometry, such as OBJ files, for example, and other non-proprietary generated geometry in these environments as well. If I want to compare, for example, embodied carbon, I can also pull that up as a potential option, and then I can compare that against other options as well. So I can look at that in the proposal on the right-hand side, and it will give me a different breakdown, system breakdown by envelope structure, interiors, even MEP systems as well. And then if I change my geometry, increase building height, increase number of buildings on a site within that proposal, I can then just rerun that embodied carbon comparison again, and then I can do it in option 3 and option 4 as well. So very quick to run those analysis based on that geometry that you may have generated. Once you select your option, you wish to export your option to go, okay, we're happy with the embodied carbon, we're happy with the daylight analysis, we're happy with the sunlight analysis, for example, or the solar energy even, we're happy with what you see in a particular option. You can then export that. Into your particular design tool. A particular one I prepared in the background is Revit. So if I open up Revit in the background, I was able to. I won't save that. If I go into my 3D view, I was able to export then that massing proposal into Revit directly from inside that environment. So the way I was able to do that, just to show you from the tool itself. If I come into a particular option, I'll go back into my site designer, come back into my proposal. So I'll choose which proposal I'm happy with, which option effectively. Click on those 3 dots, go to Revit, send it into Revit, and then I come into Revit effectively. A few minutes later, it may take a few minutes to generate, and then what I do is I just load in that proposal. I will just hide that, load in that proposal, and then it will bring in whatever proposal I want in. So I can do that for any option I want. This information does come in as Revit geometry. So if I click on this, for example, it converts the geometry from the Forma site designer. It automatically generates that into an intelligent Revit object. So there we have a roof. It's fairly basic roof, just a concept roof. I can increase the buildup of that, in your standard Revit process. The same for walls, for example. I can convert that to curtain walling, or I can increase, the buildup in that wall as well and start to add my insulation, my detail, or again using curtain walling, depending on what your option is as well. It also brings in all the levels from Forma as well. So it's that direct workflow that it comes from Forma directly into Revit. So you're able to then start adding your more detailed design on top of this effectively, if you're happy with your early stage analysis that occurred inside the Forma tool. And again, if you generate a further option, somebody wants to see a different option, you can quickly generate that inside the Forma tool. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to jump back into Forma, for example. I'm going to show you a quick example of how I can generate maybe some options. So proposal number 4, I just have a completely blank site. I've retained, obviously, the existing surrounding context, the terrain, a line of trees here. So if you are familiar with this, there's a new kind of cycle track down here. It brings you from kind of end of East Point all the way into Dublin Port up here. So effectively, there's a nice cycle track there now. So we're building our development around that area. So we've retained, obviously, existing amenities and infrastructure. So what I have here is I have my defined site boundary. So this could be, if it's a private development, for example, there's going to be your OS map or your agreed surveyor's drawing, for example, that you can bring in and have your defined site boundary. So that's your parameters or your constraints that which you're working in. So if I have that file, for example, I'm able to import that in here. And then if I want to automate a particular building layout, I simply just come to my site automation tool up here, click on the site automation tool, and then I can choose the entire surface. So I can choose the entire surface, and it's going to generate a number of options very quick. So again, that's generated those entire buildings. I can then further start to do a bit of more tweaking or detail on that if I want. Very uniform looking layout here, linear buildings. I've got city blocks, for example. I can do tower buildings, or I can do a mixed development as well. Oh, sorry, just do a bit of a refresh on that. There we go. So I can do a bit of a tweak on that as well if I want, and start to change maybe the layout or the variation of that site as well. So I can then to go, okay, well, maybe I want to do 10 stories, for example, across the site. Do I want to change my story height or the tower height, for example? or do I even want to do a completely different layout, something they call honeycomb? So it gives that kind of variation, something a bit more organic rather than just your linear city blocks. So what that's done is generated, a certain number of height buildings, for example, and then I can start to define. Effectively, I can start to define the various different heights of that, the various different uses of that as well, if I need to. So I can just come out of that, for example. I can then start to run the analysis on that and generate my new proposals. I could even then do a very quick proposal. Another one, for example, come out of proposal number 4. That's been generated. Come into proposal number 5, generate again a very quick different type of layout, select on that surface, and maybe I do want to use something a bit more linear. Maybe I want to change the offset, for example, to 5 meters, and generate it on that, for example. And I can just generate very quick proposals like that, and back to the analysis in the top right, I can then start to run my analysis by using those various different options, and then compare those against 1, 2, 3, 4, or option 5. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Jonathan. That's been
Thank
very
you.
interesting. We've had a huge participation, and we've also had a huge amount of questions on the chat. So I'll just let you know, CITA SkillNet have a 2026 training and funding opportunity. So if you look there, you get 40% off. So it's very well worth investing in the time, and it'll give you skills that you really need for the modern world. And I suppose CITA have started off an AI conversation, and it's also collaboration conversation. So we need to get on board and learn from each other and share information. More information on the CITA SkillNet. And then if I can finish up, because I am conscious that we're running out of time, our next event is event 3, Predictive Analytics for Program, Cost and Commercial Control. And that'll be of great interest. We've had a huge turnout today, a massive turnout, and there's a lot of questions in the chat box. We just haven't had the time, to be honest, to answer them. So we'll try and get answers back to the guys who have put them in. But I'd also like to thank all of CITA, and I'd like to thank Realton. I'd like to thank Engineers Ireland, and I'd particularly like to thank Sinead, who have been very, very helpful doing this. And I hope you've enjoyed this CITA webinar, and that you've learned from it. And it's increased your desire to know more, because AI is here. We're using it right here and now, so you might as well get on board. There's no getting away from it. So let's learn how to use it, responsibly. Let's learn how to get the best of it. Thank you very, very much, and looking forward to see you again very soon at the next event. Thank you.